Section 3 focuses on what does contraception say to God? Now, most people will probably never ask themselves this question, but it really is important that we go over this adequately. So keep in mind, my wife and I, by the way, I'm not pointing the finger at anybody here. If you were using contraception up to this point, there's nothing immoral about that if you were using it for medicine only. So you might have been put on it for medical reasons. So I'm not talking about those situations. I'm talking about using contraception as to nullify the sexual act. Of course, when you get married, that's what the reality will be if you're still on the pill or using some sort of other hormonal contraception. So keep that in mind. Okay. Now, when Marianne and I were using the pill, what were we saying to God? So what would it be like, though, if now in the Catholic Church, we believe that the body and blood, it literally is the body and blood of Jesus Christ. We don't believe it's a symbol. Okay, but let's step out of Catholic world for a second and step into Protestant world and say for a second that it's only a symbol. Okay, so imagine you're going up to receive communion. Okay, not really the Eucharist, but just communion. And someone, the sensation sweeps over you as you stand up and you realize, oh, I got to use the restroom. So you're thinking, what am I going to do? Okay, no problem. I'll just go to the restroom after I receive and it'll be okay. So that's what you make up your mind you're going to do. Now, the person in front of you, you notice that they receive, but as soon as they put the host in their mouth, they spit it on the ground and walk away. Now, is that scandalous or not? Now, my guess is that you're probably thinking it's scandalous. Even though it's just a symbol of Christ, you're actively, or that person is actively rejecting the gospel in front of everybody. Either they're showing disrespect to the traditions of your faith, or they're literally saying, I don't believe. Okay. Now, what if something slightly different happens? Instead of spitting it out right in front of everybody, this person just continues to the back, and you walk to the back, and you're thinking, okay, well, now it's time to use the restroom. You notice that this person is going to the exact same place you are, so you think, oh, they must have had the same problem. You sit in one stall, they sit in the stall next to you. And then you're using the restroom, but then you realize that they are spitting out the symbol of Christ into the toilet and flushing it down the drain. Okay, is that less scandalous or the same? And my guess is you'd say it's the same. Why? Because they're doing the exact same thing. They're just privately rejecting the gospel versus doing it in public. So they're the type of person that you'd meet at church that would say, amen, brother, I do believe, but they really don't believe. Okay? But literally, we're doing the same thing when we use contraception. We're rejecting our spouse's body. Now, I know that you love who they are and you love their personality and all that, but there's something about their anatomy, their fertility that bothers you when you use contraception. And that was the case with me. Marianne's ovaries made me uncomfortable for the first couple of years. I didn't understand why I had to be fruitful. Okay, so externally, I appear to accept her body, but internally, I'm rejecting her anatomy. And by the way, that's the way God made her. God gave her fertility for a reason. The Bible talks about fertility being a blessing. Okay, if that's really not the case, then really the Bible's a lie. Okay, this is another example. This is by Christopher West, so this is not like I'm brilliant enough to think of this myself. But most of you have probably sent out your wedding invitations already. When Marianne and I went through the process of sending out our invitations, it took us a long while and we agonized over it. Why? Because we had a huge long list of people and we realized we only have this much money and this much space, so therefore we're going to have to edit that list. So we went through the process of crossing people off. Okay, it took a long time, by the way, but some of them were easy. Like Marianne would notice, hey, isn't this your ex-girlfriend? Yeah, she ain't coming to our wedding, and cross them off right away. Okay, so but what's the best way to make sure that person doesn't show up at your wedding? I think the easiest way is just don't invite them. They will know that, hey, well, Tony's only known me this many years. It's, probably normal that they haven't, that they're not inviting me. And you can still be friends with this person. You're not doing anything to disrespect them necessarily, unless, of course, they're your parents or something. Okay. You could do another thing that's just as effective, and you could disinvite them to the wedding. You could say, you know what, so-and-so, Marianne and I were very excited about getting married. We're going to get married on July 22nd. At St. Catherine of Siena. We're very excited about this, but you know what? We don't want you to be part of this day. So please stay away from our wedding. And if you do show up, I'm going to have to call security and we're going to kick you out. Now, is that the same thing? Most people would say, of course not. So we have a lot of people that think, okay, well, you've got the couple that uses contraception to not have a baby, and you have that second couple that uses NFP. Aren't they the same? Aren't they doing the same thing? does the ends justify the means? And the answer is no, it doesn't. How you do things really does make a difference. And this is a psychological concept called teleology is consequentialism. The ends justify the means. The Catholic Church does not believe in that. They believe in deontology. It's principle-based ethics. How you do something matters. Killing grandma is totally different than letting her die naturally, okay? So think about the nature of sex. Every time we have sex, we are basically asking God to create a new baby, whether you want to or not, okay? Think about it this way. Men cannot separate ejaculation from orgasm. It's part of the way that we are created, okay? So we cannot stop this. Our bodies are almost saying, even though my will is not wanting to have a baby right now, I am open to the idea. Okay, that's the way our bodies were created. Now, God is the one who will actually create the baby or not. We can try our darndest to have a baby, and if it's not God's will, it's not going to happen. Okay. Now, when God opens that invitation, if we're using contraception like I was before, I'm sending him a disinvitation. I'm saying, you know what, God, please bless our finances, everything else, but stay out of our bedroom. This is our domain. You have no right to do anything here. So it's really not acting very loving with God in that sense. Now, what if you had a friend who you knew couldn't show up to your wedding? They live maybe overseas. They're not going to fly all the way over here to see your wedding. Is it wrong to send them an invitation as a gesture only? No, unless you're expecting something out of them, like a present or something like that, okay? Neither is it wrong for an infertile couple to get married. I have friends that were in their 60s and got married, okay? They're well past childbearing age. So why are they allowed to get married? Because it's not about production. It's not about being able to have babies. It's about being open. God is not asking you, telling you that you have to have children in marriage. He is saying that you have to be open to the possibility of having children. That's what being open to life is all about. And that's what the church is asking you to do. They're not asking you to use nothing and to just get pregnant, okay? So that couple that uses NFP refrains from sexual intimacy when they're infertile. When they're fertile, because they have a bigger goal. It's not sinful to do so. Think about Lent. Most of you have probably given up sweets for Lent at some point. Now, if your friend offers you a piece of cake, which is maybe your vice, right? For me, it's buttercream, okay? I love buttercream cake. It is not sinful for me to say, you know what? Thanks, but no thanks. In fact, that says more to God in an act of love than actually indulging just because I don't want to be impolite. So it is oftentimes a greater sign of love to give something up that you really want than it is to indulge in it. Think about this. You come home, it's your anniversary. What are you guys going to be doing tonight? I can guess, okay? It's only natural. Is it wrong? Now, you come home and find out your spouse has a fever. Does it say more that night? Does it communicate more love having sex and going ahead with your original plans? Or for you to take care of this person and just get them soup, tuck them in bed, and tell them you love them? That says more about love than having sex does. So keep in mind, it's not sinful to give up something you really want because of a greater goal. Okay, that's what a couple that uses NFP does during their fertile phase, which is, by the way, only about 25 to 33% of the cycle. Now, the couple that uses NFP will have intercourse during the times at which they're infertile. It's not wrong to do so. It's not wrong to send God an invitation as a gesture when you know he's probably not going to show up to your wedding. Okay, so during the infertile time, I pretty much know God's not going to create a new baby. However, it's not disordered for me to have sex during that time. Okay, because God created that time in Marianne's body for a reason. She has natural infertile times. It's not wrong to use so. It is wrong, however, to engage in contraception and say, you know what, I want the pleasure. I don't care if we could get pregnant, but I'm going to prevent us from getting pregnant. That is disordered. It's kind of like the idea we talked about before with food. I'm going to eat all the food I want, eat all the Oreos, but if I gain any weight, I'm going to call Nabisco and yell at them and say, how dare you create a product that made me gain weight and I didn't want to, after taking all these carb blockers. It's kind of disordered thinking of food that way. And it's also disordered thinking of fertility that way. Most people also don't understand how the pill works. And when I say the pill, I mean all hormonal contraception. Okay. Now, the pill was created in the 1960s. The early versions of it were very effective in preventing ovulation. Most people think that's the only way the pill works, and that's not correct. The pill puts you in a state of pseudo-pregnancy, where you have high levels of both estrogen and progesterone, and it fakes your brain into thinking you're already pregnant so you don't ovulate. Those high levels of estrogen and progesterone will suppress FSH and LH in the brain, and those are the hormones. LH causes ovulation, but FSH has a big role in that. So the early versions of the pill were very successful in doing so. They were about 98% effective. But they're also very dangerous. 3 women died during the test trials, and they said, you know what, that's acceptable. That's an acceptable loss. Okay. Ever since the pill came out, they've been reducing the dosage year after year. Okay. The current versions, this is actually a little dated. It's 1998. So we're not any better than 1998. In fact, we're probably even lower by this point. But the current versions of the pill are 92% about in preventing ovulation. So about 8% of the time, or 1 month a year, you're going to ovulate whether you want to or not. Okay, the second way the pill works is it tries to thicken the cervical mucus to prevent the sperm from getting to the egg. If that doesn't happen, we have conception. Okay, conception is when sperm meets egg. That's when human life begins. Its DNA is not its mother's, it's not its father's, it's new human DNA. It came from the mother and father, but it's unique. So that is a new human baby. Now, the problem is if you're on hormonal contraception, the new baby, when traveling down the fallopian tube, cannot implant in the uterine wall because the endometrium has been so thinned out because of the effects of contraception that it doesn't allow the new human being to implant. So you have an early chemically induced abortion. Now, the goal of people that use the pill is not to have abortion. I'm not saying if you use the pill, you're okay with abortion. But a lot of people don't realize that this is the reality, that this can happen, and usually does maybe about once a year if you're having sex on those days. Okay, so keep that in mind. Even if you're on the pill, it's not a pro-life act. I'm not going to point the finger at you guys, but just keep in mind pro-contraception and pro-life are oxymorons. They don't work together. I also want to mention that I do know plenty of people that were on the pill and got pregnant anyway. Go into your doctor's office and ask them. I'm sure that they know people that were using contraception and got pregnant. So don't think that just because you're on the pill or using some sort of hormonal contraception that it's a get out of jail free card, okay? So please realize that. We're going to continue in a section with the benefits of NFP.